Welcome, nerds, to That Just Happened. This week, the things that happened, we watched some horror movies, basically, and rom-com, because, I'm holed up in a house that it just reasons. We're going to talk about the things. Let's get into it. So yeah, the explanation for what this show is. That Just Happened is the sister show to The Week in Nerddom. So The Week in Nerddom is news. When a thing gets released, we generally stop talking about it. I mean, like, if it's a movie, we'll talk about the opening weekend box office or what have you, but that's about as much coverage as it gets in news. And that's also a lot of dry facts. I mean, I do interject my thoughts on and the potential impact of things, but once a thing has been released, it's not really as well covered as when it was coming soon. So this is my response to that. Let's talk about the things that we actually interacted with. Let's talk about the new movie that just came out. Let's talk about the movie that came out 6 years ago that we were avoiding because we heard it was garbage. We watched it and now we know it's garbage. You know, the things along those lines, if you will. So that's kind of the gist of what's going on here. Didn't really dive into much new music this week, though I really wanted to. I just haven't had the opportunity. So we're just talking about movies. I haven't gotten any new comic books for a long time either, and that's kind of itching a little bit. That itch needs scratching. So let's get into the movies that happened. I didn't go to any concerts or anything either, which also sucks. But Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey is a thing that we've been talking about this for like 3 months, I think. Finally got a chance to watch Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, and wow, this is honestly, being absolutely hand to God, honestly, a lot better than anticipated. I expected something absolutely terrible. I expected something along the lines of the, what is that Cheer or Die movie? The cheerleading horror movie that just came out that we talked about previously. I expected something that level of garbage, and it really wasn't. Obviously, it's a very small budget horror movie, but it really works in a lot of ways. There was some stuff at the end where it was like, all right, I feel like we're really just dragging this out for no reason. Like, there was no storytelling reason for the end to go the way it did, or to be drug out as long as it was. Like, I appreciate that the ending leaves it open so that we could get a sequel and such, so that's fine, but like, it's probably about 10-15 minutes there that we probably could have cut out and nothing would have changed about the movie. So that kind of sucked. But like, overall, man, if you like slasher movies and you have a bit of a sense of humor, then this is probably an easy recommend to go to watch for yourself. The other thing, there were a couple of directorial decisions that seemed weird. I don't know, horror movies and nudity, that kind of happens, but like, there's one scene in here where it's like, well, that absolutely didn't need to go down that way. Like, there's no reason for that 3 seconds of nudity. And it's not even like for shock value, because like, that's kind of in like 80s slashers where that kind of trope became a very common thing in horror movies. It was the titillation factor that got people interested, and then that got you hooked into the movie because the primal urges and things. And then like the shock kind of like switched it on you, and it was very jarring, and that was kind of how they did the thing to keep people interested for a long time. That's not how this played out. It seemed overly gratuitous in no kind of, like, it wasn't funny. It wasn't like, it didn't change the effectiveness of the scene in which it happens. I don't know. It just felt really out of place and for no good reason. But again, this is a really minor gripe about a actually pretty good horror movie. Honestly, the other thing I really appreciated about this, no real jump scares. It was just slasher movie. Like, atmosphere and legitimate slasher, like calling back to the 70s and 80s of the height of the slasher movie. Well, I mean, like that's kind of when it started, was in the mid to late 70s, but yeah, still, absolutely. If you are a horror movie fan, you must watch Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Next is another horror movie, Terrifier 2. I watched this one. I've actually had a version of this sitting around for a little while, and it's just been a minute for me to get around to watching it, partially because the lady friend just didn't seem super interested in watching it, so I took an opportunity and watched it. This is better than the first Terrifier movie. That being said, I really didn't like the first Terrifier movie. It was not good. Like the kill. All right, so generally speaking, modern horror fans kind of fall into two categories when it comes to movies of this type, when it comes to like slasher type movies. Either you're looking for something that harkens back to the glory days, much like Winnie the Pooh did, harkens back to the glory days of like the original Halloween movie or Black Christmas or something along those lines, where there's a lot of atmosphere and it's just creepy and it's a good scare. Or you're a modern horror fan who watches slasher type movies because you really like the gore and you like to see the creative killing and you don't really care too much about the atmosphere or the story being told. You just want to see a lot of really funny kills or really gory or something along those lines. Terrifier 1 is definitely the movie if you're in the second camp, because there is nothing for story. There's very little atmosphere. It's just how much blood can we get on screen and for the entire length of this movie. And Terrifier 2 is still very much that movie, but kind of starts to dip its toes into the camp number 1 stuff. So I definitely appreciate that they're actually giving Art the Clown some sort of like presence instead of just being kind of creepy and a little funny. Honestly, there's moments in this movie where it's like, am I broken? Because that was funny. It's really disturbing, but still also kind of hilarious. So yeah, that was a thing. And also like, they're turning him into this almost like Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers-esque entity in that he's got this almost supernatural element to him, leaning very, very hard apparently into the Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees stuff. Voorhees specifically from like the late 90s, early 2000s, Jason Goes to Hell, Jason X kind of Jason Voorhees. And Freddy Krueger, the whole dream thing, like those two elements are very much present in this Terrifier 2 movie. But the other thing about it is the kills were much more, I wouldn't say creative, but they were actually kind of funny this time, which makes me question my sanity. And also like, I don't know, just there seemed to be a purpose. And I think that gives this movie a little bit more substance than the first movie. So it's definitely a step up in quality all over. And also, if you're just here for the kills, there's plenty of them. This actually is much, much bloodier than the first movie as well. So if that's what you're looking for, then you've come to the right place. And then our final piece for That Just Happened is definitely maybe. Just kind of been home alone and missing the lady friend, so I watched my favorite rom-com. So sue me. I'm still nerdy, I promise. Ryan Reynolds is there's very few movies that man has made that I don't really like. Some of his early stuff, not the greatest, but definitely maybe is like right before he became a nerd icon, as well as just a, pretty boy actor who's actually quite talented. And I mean, Isla Fisher is, I think Isla Fisher is one of my favorite female comedic actresses probably of all time. Like, her performance in this movie is great, but it's not funny per se. I mean, it's real, I guess, is a fair way to put it. But her performance in Wedding Crashers is second to none. She's awesome. Yeah. So just, I don't know. I can't say enough good things about this movie. Abigail Breslin is the little girl in it, and she's an incredible actor, basically always has been. This is not too long after her breakout role in Little Miss Sunshine, and just shows everybody why she still has an incredible career, because she's a great little actress. That being said, I believe that's everything we have for this. So it's a short one. Going forward, I honestly don't know. I'm going to be digging into some old DVDs, old movies and such for the next few days, possibly the next week or so, until our family situation calms down. So before I actually get the hell out of here, what happened for you? Tell me in the comment section. Let's talk about it, man, because I'm very interested. I very little outside connection right now. So yeah, let's talk about what happened for you. Did you finally read any of the comic books we've been talking about in the news show? Have you watched any great movies recently that you think the world needs to appreciate a little bit better? Let's have that conversation. Are you digging into a TV series that you've put off until now, because that way you can binge the entirety of it, much like I'm kind of putting off Breaking Bad to do something similar. But yeah, thank you very much, nerds, for joining me. We'll see you in the next one. Before we go, always remember that if it's genuinely nerdy, it's probably here, and that just happened.
I can't believe that just fucking happened. Is it dead?